Joining me right now is former senior advisor to the Clintons. He is the NBC Partners CEO and Stagwell Group president and managing partner, Mark Penn. Mark, it's great to see you. Thanks very much for joining us. When we spoke last week, we talked about all of this mislabeling, calling a $1.9 trillion spending package a COVID plan. It was only 10% COVID. And now we've got this plan, which he's calling an infrastructure plan, but it's only 25% infrastructure. I don't know what you would call this. Is this the Green New Deal?
Well, I think you'd call this the era of big government is back. I mean, you may remember when I was working with President Clinton, the whole concept was to not necessarily intrude in the private sector. Instead, this is enormous expansion of big government. Is it infrastructure? Some of it is infrastructure, as people think of it as roads and bridges and in today's world, the internet, but a lot of it is not. And the question is, will there even be congressional hearings or regular order to discuss one of the largest bills in the history of the country?
Yeah, and it's also going to come with the largest tax increase since FDR. We're talking about some of the most spending and tax increases that many of us have ever seen. Mark?
Well, 56% in this month's Harvard Cap's Harris poll said, in fact, that this is a return to big government, welfare state. I think Democrats are walking a very difficult line here in terms of the public wanting COVID relief, wanting infrastructure, but instead getting bills of enormous magnitude that include all sorts of other programs that they may or may not even come to understand. And at a certain point, people are very worried that inflation, that in effect the Treasury could be looted and the economy wrecked. I think there are some big issues here that people are going to need to discuss.
All as we look, Dagan McDowell, at a total debt number right now that the U.S. is facing of $28 trillion, Dagan.
Right. Oh, but the debt doesn't matter. See, with modern monetary theory, which was pushed by the far left, like Bernie Sanders and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, the Fed can just keep printing money and then buy our debt. So it even begs the question of why do you even need to raise taxes, Mark? And this seems like kind of a twofold hyper left-wing idea. One, you raise taxes because you want to punish. It's punitive. You want to punish the people that the left hate, the wealthy, job creators, maybe eventually if you want to drive an automobile with an internal combustion engine, you punish them as well. But you also have a government takeover of decision making. You take power away from private businesses, private owners, and the individual. This is a government knows best. Bureaucrats know how to spend your money better than you do. That's the essence. It's kind of a twofold thing. Punish the rich, and we take over personal decision-making.
Well, right now, most voters oppose tax increases of any kind coming in the middle of a pandemic. So it's kind of perplexing to say that the economy needs stimulus. We have to get people back to work. And then at the same time, propose large tax increases. I think this has never been done before in terms of trying to stimulate an economy and move it forward. MMT or not, MMT is an unproven theory here, and the Democrats are putting a lot at risk. I know some of their own members are beginning to question, is this too far? I know certainly a lot of the problem solvers Democrats want both regular order back so that there are real committee hearings, and also want state and local taxes, restored in terms of a deduction in their state. So I think there's certainly going to be some issues here. But the big question is, will this bill get an exploration? And this is only part one. There's another part here coming. So this could be over $4 trillion. MMT or not, that is the most enormous government spending, certainly since FDR and the Depression. And we're not in that kind of economic environment right now.
Exactly. And we are expecting part two in the next couple of weeks. We'll probably get that by the end of April, and that will include much higher taxes, not just on the corporate sector, but individuals. I want to switch gears, ask you about what you're seeing in your polling, Mark, about how Americans feel about the crisis of the border. Your results show 79% of voters say that the crisis needs to be addressed immediately. Tell us what you have found in speaking with people about the border part of this radical agenda.
Well, I think that the administration can't deny that there's a crisis there. There's no question that 79%, as you said, think there's a crisis that needs immediate attention. I'm surprised neither the president or the vice president went down to the border, which is a typical response when something's a crisis, and then say how you're going to fix it. I think most people are looking at this and they're saying, well, if there was a wall built, it should stay there. Things should be patched. Catch and release doesn't make sense. That they're returning people to their country to prevent this kind of surge in immigration. I think this is a big issue for Democrats. It's rising fast. People thought this immigration issue in terms of the border was in the rearview mirror, but right now it's rising really quite rapidly in the polls as a big issue. And the American public really says that they want some strong border protection. At the same time, they're willing to be quite compassionate to those who are here and to particularly DACA recipients, but only in exchange for strong borders at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, these are all practical ideas, Mark. I mean, of course, the wall was paid for. But in the era of Trump, everything is upside down. It was Trump's policy, so let's get out of it. I mean, did they make these decisions without actually studying the issues just because they wanted to make sure that they didn't have Trump's legacy?
Well, they clearly acted hastily, and they clearly have a crisis that they didn't anticipate in terms of the border. And so the question is, are they going to be able to stop or reverse that crisis, or is this going to weigh, heavily on their politics because it is coming up, as such a big issue? Certainly, if they want to have a policy of being, quote, more humane, having thousands and thousands of children in really small areas is not going to be seen by the public as more humane. They're going to need to do something about this.
Yeah. All right, Mark, great to get your take as always. Good to see you. Thank you, sir. Mark Penn joining us this morning.